Coming up on today's video, Miro's saga with AEW takes a strange twist. There is a major update on a severely injured AEW star. We have the real reason why next week's Live Raw got cancelled. And will Shawn Michaels wrestle again? I'm Michael Sidgwick from WhatCulture Wrestling.
I'm Michael Hamford from WhatCulture Wrestling.
This is the news. So yes, Dave Meltzer on Observer Radio yesterday came through with a further update on Miro's situation, his sort of exile or stasis, or whichever glamorous, sexy use you want to use to sell a thumbnail, in All Elite Wrestling. Last sighted at All Out in a winning trios match alongside Sting and Darby Allin over the House of Black. The last we saw of Miro wasn't actually then. There was a vignette filmed where it was a basic but brilliant, it's Miro after all, spiel backstage, darkened room, in which he closed with Belt the Redeemer. And I was like, cool, God's favourite champion was awesome, He's going to challenge for another title, this is great. And then absolutely nothing happened whatsoever after that, and he's not really been seen since. And there's been various reports over the last weeks or months. Basically, Dave Meltzer seems to be the key source on this one, saying words to the effect of, look, he was presented something similar to the Ethan Page deal, which you got to push ahead of and after Full Gear. Not quite the same, but quite similar, in which effectively he would be on television, he would have a lot of time to talk, he would have a lot of time to work, but he would be ultimately used to put somebody over. And then yesterday on Observer Radio, when Meltzer was talking about this again, he said or suggested that because Lana, who the real life wife of Miro of course, had said something to the effect somewhere of, everyone goes back to WWE, that could be interpreted as a hint that Miro himself wants to return to WWE. And again, he says that Miro was leery, I think the word was used, of doing jobs. And this is with the exception of Bryan Danielson. It seems to be a bit of a deal amongst certain ex-WWE talents who have since resurfaced in All Elite Wrestling. A sort of brouhaha spilled out of this on Twitter. Unfortunately, it didn't go very far. I was glued to my phone hoping for some absolute priceless banter. What a weird but great promo battle Dave Meltzer versus Miro would be. But alas, it
That gif of the guy popping the chair out.
What would that look like? What would that look like? Brilliant, I imagine. But ultimately, it didn't really amount to much. But Miro did say, well, what happened between January and July, Dave? And Dave was like, we tore your hamstring, as far as I know. But then, you go back through the archives and the news reports, and, Miro was fit and raring to go at one point, but it was revealed that, creative did not have anything for him. Look, this is one of those situations where I was going to unleash a take on Twitter, and I thought, you know what, I don't know anything about this. And there's two sides to the story, and I've got a take on it, but I couldn't be arsed. I just had a mulled cider instead. My take, ultimately, is that Miro should be used. Yeah. I don't necessarily think he should be given the world title and have the Bob Holly run, but I do think he should be used. I do think it's kind of promotional malpractice that he hasn't been used, even if there's a political reason and an anxiety over him going to WWE for that matter, because he's just so goddamn talented. And if there's any fans who say, he should do jobs, no, he bloody shouldn't. Yeah. He's an absolutely incredible professional wrestler, a rare, brilliant all-rounder, like promos, in-ring quality. He's got this completely distinct edge to his act. And this is what happens with competition. People have agency again. They can say, I don't want to do this. They don't have to work under Vince's daft whims, and I think more power to him. As much as I miss him, if he's got standards, let him have standards.
Yeah, I kind of welcome the push and pull between the promoter and the performer coming back as a result of there no longer being a monopoly. I can understand why younger fans especially might be furious with Miro, especially if you're like an AEW loyalist and you feel like you should just do what you're told. But the problem with everybody doing what they were told was that made for very bland television.
About a century of it as well.
For the fat end of 20 years, ultimately, everyone is kind of within their right to do what they wish. Miro's within his rights to say no thanks to a promo and sort of veto something. Similarly, Tony Khan is within his rights as a promoter to simply not use him if that's the case. The meritocracy that was trying to be established within AEW is great as a fan, but obviously wrestlers and promoters can disagree on how far you are up that pecking order. I welcome conversations like this, and ultimately, as a fan, I'm with you, I would like to see Miro back on television, and I personally feel like he warranted his place over, I'm not going to name other performers, but you can look at that TV show and see, in 2021 especially, how it felt like he was on this upward trajectory towards the AEW title, perhaps, or at least a shot at it. I'm all for chats like this, regardless of how it plays out.
Yes.
I'm all for, in both companies, wrestlers knowing their worth and knowing the value and fighting for that if they believe in it.
Indeed. If I'm Miro, very quickly before we move on, if I'm Miro, right, okay, And I've been so great in 2021, and I've come back from wretched creative, and I know my value, and I've already been sort of buried before, so I'd be apprehensive about something that I would perceive to be a risk, because the game and stuff was terrible, and he's probably a little bit apprehensive about doing something that could lower his stock. If I'm Miro, right, the absolute acclaim out the ace that this man got in 2021 as God's favourite champion, he had every right to be overshadowed by the arrivals of CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole. And the creative generally was fantastic throughout 2021 on much of it, with the conclusion to the, or for now, of the Omega Page saga. The Young Bucks were in scintillating form. Like, there was loads of stuff going on. MJF was cutting great promos every week. We got Nick Gage on TV. It was a wild, eventful, shocking, incredible year. And Miro was right there at the top for me. So he should know his value, and apparently he does. Moving on to our next story, there's a nice and hopefully welcome injury update on AEW's Adam Cole, who last wrestled, of course, at the otherwise brilliant AEW X New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door pay-per-view, during which he was severely injured in the four-way IWGP heavyweight title match, necessitating an abrupt and anticlimactic finish. And I started to get uneasy about the whole situation. Like, obviously at the time it looked harrowing. As the weeks and months unfolded, updates were few and far between. You knew it was a head injury. Like, he didn't hurt his leg, you can tell that. And a head injury is always very, very alarming for very obvious reasons that I should not have to reiterate here. The thing that started to get me really alarmed as opposed to merely uneasy is when CM Punk, otherwise in the most foul mood imaginable, at the Brawl Out press conference where he just wanted to scorch the earth, the man still found time, right? When you're in a fit of rage, you don't want to be nice to anyone. And yet Adam Cole is such a nice guy, by all accounts, that in the midst of the most pissed off he's probably ever been, CM Punk, he was like, Adam Cole's a sweetheart, I'm really worried about him. And I was like, oh my God, if you can take that time out of that mood to really express your concern over Cole, then Christ, it must be quite serious. So I started to get really alarmed around that time. But happily, Dave Meltzer was asked on Twitter yesterday, or possibly the day before, about his status, and a very good report, a promising one rather, came through, in that he's doing much better, Dave Meltzer says, and at the present moment, there's no time frame, because there are never any time frames with a concussion, but AEW are being very cautious, which I take as a good thing. You should be extremely stringent in this sort of situation, but the fact that he's doing much better and they're just simply being cautious at this point expresses, at the very least, that we're nowhere near the all hope has been lost stage.
Yeah, it's just nice news, isn't it? Wrestling's so much better with Adam Cole in it, but that's very much a selfish take as a wrestling fan. Ultimately, when it's somebody that you like or care a great deal of as a performer, the amount of wrestlers we've seen with head injuries.
Your wife likes Adam Cole, doesn't she?
A little bit too much, actually. But like, just the sooner we get him back as fans, the better. But more importantly, like, the man's health. Like, as long-standing wrestling fans, there have been one too many concussion stories that have not ended well, or when wrestling didn't really know how properly to deal with it effectively. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like we're in that time anymore. And yes,
fingers crossed, because he's just hell of a guy.
Take as long as you need, and we hope to the extent where you can come back. It'd be like wrestling does miss him.
It's one of those things where I'm starting to really miss Adam Cole, and I hope a lot of people are as well, because I thought the reaction he was getting throughout the year was just kind of disgusting, even by like wrestling Twitter / squared circle sort of standards, or whatever. Bloody, it's horrible everywhere. Let's face it. It was getting really, really ugly out there for like the nicest guy. Like, what are we even doing here? But at this point in time, like with this news, and even a few weeks, I was thinking, have the Kingdom just disappeared because that's what Tony Khan does to quite a few of his talents, or are they sort of potentially, with Kyle O'Reilly also like sadly very injured as well, and Bobby Fish out the door, they want to continue this Cole Omega story? Like, Kenny Omega knows how good Adam Cole is, he's desperate to work him in a featured storyline. Had the Kingdom been kind of like parked to the side with the idea of disassociate that sort of jobber light run, and could they get paired with Adam Cole so they could sort of do the Elite Superclick saga with slightly different players involved? Look, it's the hope that we didn't have a few months ago, so that is something. We also have the real reason why WWE cancelled next week's live edition of Raw. Instead, a absolute best edition will be broadcast instead on December 26th. And basically, the hard-working TV production staff, it was thought it's a bit shan, which is a Northeast term, a bit harsh to have them work on Boxing Day, even though the live production staff will be working Boxing Day at the Garden. It's not the TD Garden. It's in Boston. It's Madison Square Garden.
The garden will always be the garden.
The garden will always be the garden. And so the live production staff and the talent and, the bookers and the agents will all be working on Boxing Day. But it's a tradition. It's a bit of a slow news day. It's December 23rd, as you might have guessed. For me, right, not to be my usual, I almost fell over backwards. I was about to say something dickheaded as well about the Fed. Basically, it's kind of nice, but at the same time, like, my take is the garden. I understand this is an annual tradition. I understand that the market will be sad if you don't go to the garden. Yeah. I understand that the talent really like working house shows, but surely not on December 26th. And isn't the garden really exorbitant to produce in? Because the costs are ridiculous. That's why they don't run it anywhere near as often as they do. So, it's the holidays. Who cares about wrestling?
There's a romance to it. Well, this is the thing.
I won't watch anything until December 28th, I don't think.
To our fans and friends in the United States of America, quite a lot it would seem, because there's always been tickets on sale for December 25th.
World class used to have Star Wars all the time.
It's a big Christmas gift thing that we're not really part of here because they don't run in towns in the UK over Christmas, I guess. But yeah, ultimately I'm with you. This is at least this is proper vintage celebrating WWE's baby steps. Remember a few years back when they ran a live Raw on Christmas Day? Vince McMahon at his absolute obscene worst excesses.
Remember a few months ago when they said wrestling on TV?
This is it. So it's I'm all in favour of best ofs, and as well, right? I know, just a wider point on this. Anything that is a baby step towards taking a small break every now and then. Raw, having a week off the churn, will help Raw. Take 2 weeks, do a New Year's special as well.
Take 2 months. No, I'm joking. But it's true, they should have an off-season.
Yeah, the show that never stops should stop sometimes, so I'm all for this.
I would have Dynamite stop as well for at least 2 or 3 weeks as well. I want to miss it. You never get the chance to miss wrestling.
Totally.
It's no wonder everyone who gets injured, even if they're a heel, when they come back, it's I've missed you. I never get the chance to bloody miss anyone, and they always get cheered as a babyface.
Explains why Scottish football's always so hot after that Christmas break.
Sorry, Andy Murray. Last story before we get to some questions is, will Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, the sexy boy toy, return to in-ring action? No, he's told Culture Stage that he has absolutely no plans to do so, but it cropped up as a news item, so we thought we'd cover it.
Yeah.
He's basically just said no, he's having the time of his life watching the next generation of talent flourish. Axiom's great, Grayson Waller's great, Braun Breaker's great. Look, it's a bit uneven, shall we say, NXT. What a show it is.
Oh, it's great.
Sometimes it's great, earnestly. A lot of time it's great on a so bad it's good level. My life would be significantly less charmed if NXT wasn't a part of it at this point, I don't think.
Podcasts every week on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get them, covering NXT. Let us hold your hand through
Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, Apple Podcasts.
Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from.
Through the murky undergrowth of NXT, back in the Performance Centre, we will help you, we'll introduce you to some of the mad cast of characters they've got down there.
Well, they've never heard of them because Bronson Reed didn't get a pop.
No, that's it, yeah. Shawn Michaels not wrestling again. The thing about this, I suppose, is that 2022 has never been more never say never in the industry that's lived by that credo forever and ever and ever.
The only thing they'll never do is unionise now.
Yeah, that's
Vince has stepped down. Unionisation is the only thing that ain't ever going to happen.
Wrestling
it should, but it isn't.
Wrestling's one hard line and the sad reason behind it.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, Shawn Michaels felt like a never say never guy. Or felt like an actually retired guy till 2018, and then he came back anyway in that absolute disaster at Crown Jewel 2018 for the money. But then his post-match interview felt like the realest wrestler retirement story of ever, because the regret slapped across his face.
Oh my god!
The second he got backstage,
the second he was slouched by the turnbuckles, he was like.
I believe that more than any retirement situation ever in wrestling. So this one might actually stick.
Indeed. Right, we're going to finish up with some questions. Forgive me while I try not to fall out of this chair. It's absolutely ridiculous. Get us a better chair. You know what I mean? Murray's kind of I was going to say an awkward guy in the most awkward way imaginable. Murray is quite awkward. How has he not fell out with these?
I thought you were going to get Graham Norton, on that red chair when somebody pressed the button. The second you were going to criticise WWE, somebody's got a button somewhere and then away you go.
Maybe you got a voodoo doll. I know. There's one called David Lee. I think he's got a voodoo doll on me. Anyway, this one comes from Matt Banter Reigns.
Never heard of him.
The #1 mega fan, the legend, who's the biggest in all of our hearts.
Yeah, he's alright, really.
He's like the second and third size of the heart when the Grinches. That's too big for this prick. Very important question, Ben Roy. Oh, Christ. Just put it on the overlay.
On the screen somewhere.
Yeah, we are completely unprofessional. We don't do this very often.
Festive news, isn't it?
We don't do this very often, as you can tell. We didn't even sort the tally out. That was you. Our host.
Oh, no, it's all right. They said it was broken. We got away with that one.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, it's allowed.
Right, okay.
Allowed.
So Matt Banter Rain says, it's Christmas time, so I have a soft spot in my heart for certain people. Pamphlet, could you rate my pint pick a 1 out of 10, please? Would like an amateur's opinion. Cheers, lads.
Oh, mate, yeah. That's a 10.5. What's the ABV on that? 8. That's like quite low. It's too high for me, 8%, but it's quite low for Matt Rains. I've seen him go to like 10 to 12%. But
an absolute monster.
That colour, that translucent colour is right where I'm at. Jesus
Christ, that looks absolutely unbelievable.
He's good at pint picks. I've got to give him that, Matt Rains. Good at pint. Happy holidays, Matt Rains.
If he can do nothing else, he can take a picture of his beer.
He can. Have a nice Christmas, man.
Another legend, Michael Qualler. I never know how to pronounce his name.
Caller, yeah, great taste in music and film.
Absolutely incredible taste in music.
And wrestling podcasters.
Indeed. He says, since I missed the question window, what he's referring to there is we recorded a Questions You Most Want Answered podcast yesterday, which you can obviously check out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music. He's in the Lakes, beautiful area. If you're visiting these wonderful isles, like sort of picturesque, not in terms of politics or society, but the actual picturesque beauty of these isles. Hit the Lake District. It's absolutely lovely. Which Greg's roll or bake to start with? Thankfully, there is one in Keswick, so we can pick some up for mid-hike butties. Fall off the chair.
Greg's stuff. Triple H couldn't cope with Greg's, could he, when they brought him over for Clash at the Castle? He couldn't figure it out, Greg's. He was like, what the hell is this? We've heard this history. Like, I mean, or he was giving them the WrestleMania treatment, going 20 minutes trying to open it up.
Context: Greg's is a ridiculously prolific, prevalent brand. Yeah. There's like a meme where, like in South Shields, there's a Greg's, another shop, and then a Greg's next to it, which is really low budget pastries filled with meat. And like sandwiches and donuts and stuff, but it's all about the pasties or the bakes because they've gentrified it and southernized it. For me, corned beef pasty. It's just lovely, like very warming.
Aye. The steam coming off there, like the very, very pink inside of
it. Don't look at
plastic.
it.
No.
Don't look at it, but eat it.
Steak bake for me, or the vegan sausage roll, vastly superior to the generic sausage roll.
Very peppery.
Yeah. Got
very
a
peppery.
Nice seasoning to it, but yeah, steak bake as well I would go for.
I've got absolutely no idea of the time because I'm just really scared of doing this job.
It's all right, last news of the year. We're going out on a low. It's okay.
We've got time for one more.
Yeah.
And this is a more serious question, not about food or drink. Dudley's news. Do you think Rookie of the Year, Konosuke Takeshita, could continue his path to stardom by kicking out of the one-winged angel in a future match with Kenny Omega? I love this question, and I think the answer is yes. I get a lot of recency bias. I sometimes get ideas in my head. I'm like, yes, just do that. That sounds great. Because I always thought it would be Hangman Page. I thought the money was Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega. They do 2 pay-per-view matches in 2021. The first, Kenny Omega wins, but Hangman Page kicks out the one-winged angel to make you believe that he could do it. Didn't happen. The one-winged angel has this 99.999 success rate still. Still only Kota Ibushi in 2012 who was kicked out of it. So as soon as I realised that, all right, they're not giving that to Hangman. He's just going to have the belt and that's fine. Yeah. They are obviously saving it for someone. I don't know who. Maybe Kenny Omega doesn't even have it in mind. Just a really nice thing to have for when he's about to retire. I can give whoever's really hot at the time or very promising at the time. Or maybe he does have an idea. It might be Takeshita. He loves Takeshita. Responsible for like recommending him, bringing him in. Takeshita is like one of those, like we were talking on a podcast the other day about universally liked professional wrestlers who are impossible to hate. I think we arrived at Hiroshi Tanahashi, Jamie Hayter, and Sami Zayn must be the most universally beloved because everyone loves all the hardcores and like indie snobs like me love his stuff as El Generico and PWG particularly, and then he's like the absolute darling of WWE fans. I think Takeshita's up there. What could you hate about Takeshita?
Yeah, no, he kind of has got the lot, and I think it's like this Rookie of the Year guy from our esteemed colleague Adam Wilborn, of course. Kind of sums up what's great about Takeshita. You could have never seen him before and been given 6 months of the presentation that he's had in AEW and get it. You get it straight away. You understand what he offers. You understand what he can do long term for the company as a babyface, especially. I like this idea of like Omega at this point in his career just sitting on it until the right match or the right moment. There would have been a time where it would have had that. Remember the Undertaker streak era where it was like, got to give it to Ted DiBiase or Wade Barrett. And nothing against those two specifically, but this idea that like a mid-card and needed the win until it reached that point where it took a big star like a Brock Lesnar. The streak had to feel as legitimate as the guy ending it. So I think at this point, unless you want to make a world champion, like a Takeshita would be right now, you probably do just save it for a legacy kick out. Someone like a Kota Ibushi being the first guy that did it and the last guy to do it, if they're ever to fight again as part of a big...
Might be this year.
A Golden Lovers saga. You know, Jeff Jarrett, if you can talk Tony Khan into giving it up. You know, just the big names that like fit the role. I'm being facetious, of course. He wouldn't need to kick out. He could just hit him with a guitar. But yeah, someone like at this point, if not a Takeshita, I would say Justin Ibushi, or you revisit Page or an Okada, something like that. You start reaching the tail end of Omega's run, and make it not really about, oh my God, what happens now? Just it's the beginning of the end for Kenny himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that indeed. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much for sticking with us this far in the video, and thank you very much indeed for just following and supporting WhatCulture Wrestling over the year. Like, I sometimes take the piss out of certain commentators. It's a very small vocal minority. We are genuinely so touched that you continue to spend part of your day with us, whether it's on YouTube, reading our articles, or on our podcasts. And we hope you the very best for a holiday season. And I think everyone's had a pretty rubbish year.
Yeah.
This year, cost of living crises out the ass, plural. Wrestling was a bit sad across the board in so many cases, and generally just the political sphere is just completely and utterly just broken, absolutely broken. Thank you very much for sticking with us and allowing us to be your escape from all of that. I know I can be a snarky dickhead, but it's kind of a gimmick, so just deal with that. Genuinely, I'm very earnestly thankful that we've cultivated or kept hold of, or whatever you want to call it, quite a nice following of people. So thank you very much for that. I hope you have the very best holiday season. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, of course, and we will see you soon.